The following presentation was recorded live in Cincinnati, Ohio for CALLERLAB's 25th Annual Convention. This is Tape 9, Debate on T2000 Proposal, Part 2.
The T2000 discussion. I'm going to make one change. I'm going to take a little executive privilege here and take one change. We want everybody to have an opportunity to speak, and in doing so, I'm going to limit the questions to 2 minutes. If you want to do another one, get back in line. Limit the questions or the speaking to 2 minutes, and I'm going to limit the response also to a minute so that everybody has a chance. That's better hand than I get for a dance. That's good. Thank you. All right. Before, and we've got Jerry first and then Pete. Before we do that, Kip said he has to take care of an errata. I have no idea what that is.
Apparently I misspoke myself, and I want to make a clarification right now because we certainly don't want anybody to feel offended. And it concerns standard applications. We do, in fact, as a body, as a group, as an organization, we have endorsed this package, the standard basic and mainstream applications, and the other book, which is Plus. And this represents standard applications, capital S for standard, capital A for applications. And what I was referring to, of course, was my opinion of how I view these applications. But I do want to defer entirely to the decisions and judgments previously made by the membership that these do constitute, in fact, standard applications. And since the word standard applications is capitalized in the Target 2000 proposal, we must therefore justly and only assume that this document contains references to the standard applications, okay? And we have to go from there. So I stand corrected, and thank you to the individuals that pointed that out to me.
All right. And then, again, I'm going to limit the questions to 2 minutes. I'm going to limit the answers here to 1. Jerry?
Jerry Justin, Yuma, Arizona. I'm speaking in favor. I've been listening to the comments today, and I know there's a lot of people that are a little scared about what's going to happen because it's not all laid out in black and white. And there's no way we can lay it out in black and white. I want to make a few comments. Dancers only know what the callers call. It's a statement. We've had people up here talking about that the dancers are worried about the lists. They honestly don't know the lists. They only know what the callers call. The majority of dancers don't want to know the list. As long as they're having fun, that's all that counts. If the caller doesn't use certain moves from any list, the dancers don't know that until they go to somebody else who does. And then the caller that called it has to make a judgment as to whether to use it again or do a little bit of help with it as he calls. The lists need cleaning up. As I travel around, and I know a lot of the other guys that travel around, even when you go to these mainstream meccas where they only have mainstream, we call a dance, and they do not use all of the mainstream calls. We've got moves there that the local caller does not use. And I've got to find that out in a hurry to make my dance a success. Somehow I've got to make my dance a success around that, but the lists are there, and they're still not being used. Another funny thing that happens when you get booked for a mainstream dance, a lot of times you get asked to call a plus tip, sometime during the night or at the end of the dance. The dance may have 20 squares dancing mainstream all night long. We do a plus tip, and there's 20 squares on the floor at a mainstream dance. And they don't know half of the plus calls. Again, we didn't use the list. I know the local callers are concerned about what they can call. Change is not easy. It will take work. Anything worthwhile has to take some work. The major changes for the local caller will be possibly losing calls he uses and having to learn to use calls he does not.
Time.
I don't like the different rules they have on this one than we had. I was in line on the old rules.
I understand.
As in the past with programs, abuses of earlier rules create new sets of rules. Pete?
Okay, Pete Skiffins, Great Britain. I need some concept. I know we're not talking about setting concrete. I need some concept of how long you guys envisage we stay at P1 before we take them into P2. And secondly, and more importantly, how do we cocoon them and stop them being stolen and sucked into the plus or whatever? That's very important before we vote.
You know, I think that depends upon the area, Pete, that you're in. Are you in an area where they get sucked into plus and into advanced? And
yeah, it happens.
how do you do it right now? How do you guys handle it right now?
Well, they just bleed and fuss and...
human nature.
They just do, or they tend to do, what I guess most of your popular callers here do. They do what they think. They don't stick to the programs.
Is that what happens in...
At an open dance, that's what happens, and the dancers are constantly being sucked out of the mainstream as quick as we can get them out. For my part, I have a 10-square-ish club. I have no problem with that because I work all position, and I say to anybody who wants plus, there's one down the road, go. And they're back the following Monday to dance all position mainstream as well as plus. So I don't have a problem.
Good.
But it does happen.
Yeah. Yes.
In answer to your question, it's obvious by some of the answers that have gone on out here about maintenance of the constitution of programs in different areas, whether we're talking about Northwest United States or the Washington, D.C. area with the level programs of Advanced and Challenge and so forth. It is obvious that caller cooperation is the key to maintenance of the level. If you don't have it, it won't be maintained. If you do have it, the level will work. And regardless of what it is. Chuck Myers and I were discussing the program in Dayton, Ohio at one time was very good because the callers cooperated together. John Marshall, Bill Harris, and I worked very well together in Advanced and Challenge. The level is very good. What has occurred in the Northwest United States has worked because the callers cooperated. And when it doesn't, that's what the discord and the chaos happens.
Okay. Patty?
My name is Patricia Wall. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, which is a mainly mainstream area. But I'm still for this proposal because I think we do need to do something to change. I'm a member of the working class generation. A lot of people say we shouldn't even bother to try to recruit them because they won't stay. They're too busy. They have family. They have kids. They don't have time for square dancing, and they probably wouldn't like square dancing anyway. But that's not true. I'm living proof that people my generation do like square dancing. Our problem is that we don't have a place for them in square dancing. They have time for square dancing, but they don't have time for square dancing 2 days a week. They have time for square dancing maybe 1 day a month. They do get out. They have some leisure time. They just don't have every day for leisure time. If we had a program where we could bring them in and they could only dance 1 time a month and be able to do it, and they could travel with it also, that would help our generation get into it a lot more. Another problem with people in this generation is that we travel quite a bit. I work for a company that's a national company. I work in Omaha. Every once in a while we'll do assist work for El Segundo in California. Sometimes they'll send one of us out there for a while. Right now I have 6 coworkers who are in Germany putting together a system. And do I recruit these people into square dancing to say, hey, you can square dance anywhere around the world as long as you only stay in Omaha? The truth is right now we don't have standardization. We have the basic mainstream plus programs, but we do not have standardization. I can't teach my dancers and say, okay, now you can go out and dance to Mike Seastrom unless I take 30 weeks and I teach him all of plus because he might throw in a relay the Ducey because his club dances plus. I think we need to get back to that standardization, and to get there, we're all going to have to give a little bit. If we're going to get to standardization, we can't take what one group has and everybody go there because that wouldn't be fair to everybody else. Everybody's going to have to give a little bit.
Hello. I'll try to keep this short. I think we do have standardization because relay reducing means the same thing in Omaha as it does in Germany or in El Segundo. The lists are well defined. What you'll have to do is tell your people if you're going to dance in El Segundo, you have to be able to dance plus. It's a recognition thing more than a standard. Dancers have to be here, have to be there. It's a communication thing. What do I have to be able to do to go dancing there? You have to be able to do this. And I think the lists serve that purpose the way they are now.
Okay. Don?
Don Beck, Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts. As I said earlier, I'm trying to keep an open mind and also open ears. And I heard Daryl say something in his presentation this morning that made me think a little that I hadn't thought about before. This may be more or appear to be more detailed than the overall presentation and approach that we're thinking about, but I think it is pertinent to what we're talking about, that the presentation of the ad hoc committee. And it's clarification between P2 and P3. It's, as Daryl said, I would like to be able to call P2 and have a toolbox full of things to pull out, like an extended application of a little beyond the standard application, just to use for variety because my judgment said it's appropriate with this group this night with the phase of the moon the way it is. If all of a sudden we have a clear P2 and P3, my question is, does that mean we're going to have level police out there? Program police? And if I'm calling a P2 dance and try to throw in some additional variety that slips a little from what the book says, are people going to get upset? Where is the clarification between P2 and P3 and what you can use and
Good question, Don, because the beauty of this is still caller judgment. You need to have the majority of your floor dancing out there, and so once again it gets back to caller judgment, things we've been talking about for years. You're not necessarily pulling the call off of another program, but you're taking and just tweaking it and make it more interesting. For success, same thing as it is now. Nothing changes.
If I call a mainstream dance and throw in a plus call, everybody knows it. They've never heard of the call. And I shouldn't do that. But how hard, how easy, the difference between P3, 2, and 3 is a much finer line. And myself, I think I have judgment from experience of calling, but is this thing going to try and dictate my judgment? It has me scared.
I think the reason that they put the P3 in there, two reasons. One is that they want that to be a barrier to hold the dancers down, but they want that as a full program as well to prepare dancers for the advanced level. As it prepares them for an advanced level, it also acts as a barrier to keep the dancers down in the P2 area where they're going to be within the club.
Does that mean if I call a P3 dance that I can't use a P2 singing call figure? It's off the level.
On the other hand, it's also my experience that no dancer is prepared for the advanced level. I've taught quite a number of advanced basic groups. It is the demand of the positioning of the level requires you to work more positioning at your own lessons. So the situation is such that nobody's going to be ultimately prepared for the next level experience or the next program they're going to go to. That has to be contained within its own teach.
Randy Doherty, Mesa, Arizona. I have a couple of questions. Daryl said something about callers abusing the system, and I think that's what put us into this situation that we have today. It kind of is in line with what Don was saying about policing callers that are abusing the system. What do we do with them? I'd like to hear some comments from all of the panel, if they would. And especially, I thought the P3 was to try to slow down that rate, also to if people are going into advanced dancing and they do not have any concept of extended applications of mainstream or plus, how many of the panel that do call actively advanced at their last dance did the left follow your neighbor? I think, I'm not sure if some of the advanced callers in the world today have never called left follow your neighbor. And I think that should be a prerequisite before you go on into A1 or A2.
What was his question? Thank you. Your turn.
I'll use your time. I certainly do call positional plus at my advanced dances. I call positional mainstream. Actually, I find that there's stuff that I can finally do there I can't do anywhere else. I think you find that the dancers have become sophisticated enough to recognize where they are to be able to take a particular program like mainstream to its final destination, wherever you could push it at that point. And so I think that those things do become there. But I still think ultimately, no matter what you're teaching, you can teach a program so that they don't have to unlearn something to go anywhere else. Your definition teaching should be consistent enough that they can handle what they're doing and understand what they're doing, and they don't have to unlearn anything in the future if they want any more. And that should be the consistent ethical approach.
I might have heard something else in the question. What I heard was what got us into this problem today is current abuse of the existing dance programs by callers, of which we have been unable to have any serious impact on. We haven't been able to. I don't know what we can do. I really even hesitate to make a suggestion. But it has been evident to a number of the callers involved in Target 2000 from day one that this program, if it ever comes to fruition, it can't exist just in and of itself. But there has to go along with it a serious attempt to reach out in a reach-out kind of program and train callers how to use this program. They go hand in hand. Equally as important as developing new dance programs will be developing some sort of a network where CALLERLAB coaches and other interested parties and certainly qualified parties within CALLERLAB can go out into the various areas of this country and around the world and show callers how to use the new dance programs and how and what would constitute abuse of these programs. That's one thing we never did with our first programs. And rather we just said, here it is, here's your program, go out and give it a whirl. And in the process of working in a vacuum, a lot of these callers were misusing the program. Certainly not intentionally, I don't believe. Time?
Just a quick response on the policing of the situation. I think the same problems exist today because in areas where there is not a unified local caller leadership or local caller and dancer leadership, we have these problems and abuses. And those areas that you see, and those people have talked here today, where the callers and the dancers work together and make their programs work, you see less of that abuse. And that's the same thing today as after anything down the line. We're going to all have to work together and get together on a local level to make things work.
On the abuse part, I recall an old Pogo cartoon about we have met the enemy and he has asked something to that effect. And I guess I would feel more comfortable about change, more hopeful for us not committing past sins in the future if individually and as a group we were more honest about what Randy said about abuses that we created, that we ignored as individuals over the years. And if we were more honest to say that, yes, we have caused part of the problem, we promise not to do it in the future, I would feel more hopeful.
Okay, Mark.
Yes, Mark Clausing, Cincinnati, Ohio. I have no objections to streamlining any list. We've done that over a period of years. We've made our programs better. We've made them worse. But one thing that does concern me is the extended applications. Kip, you made a statement that the extended applications would be following basically the DBD APD guidelines. My question is, under the extended applications, would crossfire be allowed to be done from waves? Number two, has any, and I don't know if I was the only one confused, but I talked to Jerry Story, and I was a little bit confused. I understand that the names of these programs have not been established yet, so we're just talking theoretically P1, P2, P3. Okay. In my opinion, I'd like to keep the names the same, bottom line. Number three, and this is the last one, real quick, has any consideration been given about instructor training, teaching our callers how to teach? The reason I bring this up, in my travels, you've seen it too. I hear about classes that start out with 30 to 50 students, 60 students in these big cities. I see their graduating pictures, a square and a half. What we are looking at is a language, a square dance language. You will never, ever see a person with 1 year of French go in to teach a French course. You'll never see a company anywhere send out teachers to instruct in their professional trades without some form of instructor training. If we haven't got a program and work on that, I feel that we should. Thank you.
All right, to answer your first question, which is an important one, Mark, and I appreciate you bringing it up, extended applications has never been considered beyond the existing definitions as contained in our definition documents. So whatever would be extended applications would be limited to the language currently contained in the definitions or as ratified and changed later on, changed and ratified later on. Would you please repeat that question?
Does that definition extend beyond the allowable starting formations, or is it restricted to?
The question that Mark is bringing up is, do the definitions extend beyond the allowable formations and arrangements or whatever that are currently written down? And my answer to that, my personal answer to that is no. Okay? That we would be restricted by and limited by what we have already agreed is appropriate and is contained in our written documents, which is another reason why I made the apology for the folks who did the standard applications booklet. That follows the guidelines of dance by definition, as you're suggesting, and also opposition dancing, as we have previously had done. Limited to the existing wording in our definitions, including the preambles and the prefaces.
Okay, the instructor training, that is being taken care of as we speak. There is a committee here that has been for several years working on a caller teaching accreditation program. And that is in the process of being done and being finalized. You got to come to the microphone. We hope to have that programming. He should not have it. Okay, he can't come to the microphone. Anyway,
I wanted to clarify one thing you're saying. Is that a program in place to teach them how to teach dancers or teach them how to call?
No, that is a program. This is a program to teach them how to teach dancers. And there's a committee working on that right now. In fact, we got a report at the Board of Governors meeting last night on the progress that the committee is doing. It's called the, help me guys, it's called Certified Square Dance Teacher Program. The Vice Chairman is sitting right there. Yes, sir. Well, it's an accreditation program whereby they have to submit, much like a caller coach test, to it doesn't teach them to teach, no.
That program, no, but corresponding to the caller coach program where we had the caller coach certification, but also the caller coach training program, the same thing exists here, is that we need to take the next step to teacher training, as well as a corresponding committee that exists along with the accrediting the teachers program. So you actually would have twofold, an education process and an accreditation process.
Thank you. Good question. Jerry?
Just going back to Don Beck just for a minute, he said he was calling a P3 dance, and that means he couldn't call a P2 singing call figure. As my estimation was that the levels before the level you're calling are included in that level, for clarification. Secondly, going back to before I had to leave, I want to make sure that I didn't make the local callers mad, because without the local callers, I couldn't do what I do. I know that there's a lot of concerns with the local callers because they're the ones working in the trenches with the people. And whatever we have to do in CALLERLAB to make it right with them, to help out in any way we can, we need to do that. The other thing that I was going to get to was the P3. I'm not sure that what we said, that with the advanced, the prerequisite to advanced, I think has come out during the discussions. In the committee, that was not part of our intention at all when it was put on. And I'm not 100% sure now that it shouldn't be changed from what it was. It was on for another reason, and I'm going to say it in a minute. We have, right now, we have basic, mainstream, and plus, and we have that P3 in a form now that we call all position or extended applications. It's there now. And it's a judgment call as to when you use it. Now we're trying to go down to a P1 and a P2 from 3 levels. And I know we're trying to put this P3 in as a level. That's not to say that that can't be changed. And I'm not sure that it should be a level per se. And I think that could have been a mistake in our setup to get this out to the callers. In Europe, they use the all position. In the United States, we don't use it. So I think it may be, it's a judgment call. It should be a judgment call. It was set up basically so that we would not alienate those people, especially in Europe, who are using the all-level, all-position, extended applications in their teaching. That was the only reason it was there. It was not meant as a restriction or anything else. And I have to go get in line again, do I?
Yes, sir. But good point of clarification. Good point of clarification. Yes, sir.
I'm Don Rouse from Denver area, Colorado. There's nothing wrong with the list. We already have 4 phases. We have the CDP program. We have the basic program. We have the mainstream program. We have the plus program. All you have to do is use them. We have to get off our duff and as a unit, not individuals per se, but as a unit, agree that we will have these 4 phases and keep them. Use them. They're tools. Use whatever you can. Whatever the floor can handle, whether it's APD, DBD, whatever you want to call it, whatever the floor can handle, it's a judgment call. You can have the CDP program, but you have to have a place for them to dance. There's a basic program, but you have to have a place for them to dance. If that's all the farther these people want to go, then there should be a place for them to dance. Otherwise, these other programs won't work either. Thank you.
I'd like to agree very strongly with what you say, that no change in our program lists will make any difference at all if we continue to treat them the same way we're treating the ones we have.
You, sir, next.
Robert Hurst from England. Unfortunately, I'm afraid I'm going to disagree with the previous caller. At last year's CALLERLAB meeting, it was stated categorically that different parts of this country and different parts of my own country are calling their favourite moves. Area associations don't like a particular move, they don't call it. So we've not got standardisation. CALLERLAB was established 25 years ago, and one of the things they did, they reintroduced standardisation. I think it's now time for that change to reintroduce the standardisation. Second comment I'd like to make is that for any club that's calling at the plus level now, the beauty of this recommendation is there is absolutely no change. Agreed they may lose 1 or 2 moves, or a few moves, but the plus committee last year agreed that we should reduce the number of calls on the plus list. So the plus committee will do that anyway. So again, there's going to be no change, honest. People were saying, well, what am I going to do for new class? I think, to be honest, we've got another year now to try this out for the next classes over the next year. Let's try it, see if it does work. I believe it will work, and I'm for it. And my final comment is, I think this does cater for Europe. It does say that once the dancers have learned the first program, they can go on and learn that first program, APD, or position. So I think Europe is catered for if Europe wants to go that way. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. One thing that I would like to comment about, we have callers here from all over the world. We truly do, from Germany, 2 gentlemen here that have spoken this morning from England. All of us, it takes an element of time to attend a CALLERLAB convention.
takes an element of money. You know what it cost you to come. Think what it cost them to come. And I think that's very commendable. I think we ought to give all of our people from the foreign countries a big hand. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Beryl Skiffins. I'm also from Britain, and I'd like to totally disagree with Robert. There has been, obviously, a problem that's been highlighted here. It's probably general right the way along the world, but the main problem is the amount of people coming into the movement. That has nothing to do with the programs. That has everything to do with the leadership of this organization and the callers. The amount of callers who do not consider themselves leaders is your biggest problem. You've got the lists, stick to them. They work. We're living proof that they work. Don't change the world to suit the people who can't make them work. My God, law would go right down the tube if everybody did that. What I'd like to leave you with is 3 words: leadership, courage, and attitude. None of those take change in the lists. They're all up to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my name is Nathalie Bolin. I'm from Brussels, Belgium. And I do this for, not in the name of Belgium, but just in my name. But I know that some of the callers in Germany have said that European callers don't know those problems. But I can assure you that it's not true, because in my country this year I had to do 4 open houses to get new members. And in Belgium, this is a small country, and we have like 7 clubs. And my club is one of the only one who has 2 squares. So I think that when you have problems, you have to change something. And I've been a dancer for 20 years. I know I don't look like a...
No, you don't.
But I know that this never changed. And when in the graduation ceremony in the 4 corners we say that your club has a board and it needs frequent refilling, I'm sure that it's like that for everything. And here we have problems, we have to do something about it. And I know that you don't like changes, but sometimes changes might be a way to the continuity of this great hobby, because this is my hobby. And I said to my parents, I don't know this is hard. But what's going to replace square dance if it doesn't exist anymore?
Okay, John?
You don't look like you're how old? Neither does Mike Seastrom. He just never ages, doesn't need glasses. I'm Ron Black from Los Angeles. I stand in front of people from Los Angeles and California who know me, so there's no chance of me telling a fib. We have a club, which Mike teaches for, that was going under 2 years ago through leadership of one of the members taking it as a business, has rebuilt the club with Mike's assistance as a teacher. It is now a mega club. The clubs around it are having problems because their better dancers are going over to the mega club and leaving them with, again, a social organization. Just people who show up on a Thursday night. This is a problem from a lot of areas. One club seems to be the club to go to, and all the good dancers go over there, and the other clubs suffer. Is it a list? Well, I don't know. Those of you who have been here this weekend and last year in Los Angeles have seen my dissertation on how to save square dancing. Sherman and Jerry and the board, please read it. I have your answers right here. All of you, once you establish this list, chisel it in stone and leave it alone for 10 years. It worked for the 10 Commandments. It's work now. Leave it alone. Once you establish it, leave it alone. Let the lower level dancers dance. You advanced level callers, leave the lower level dancers alone. Don't make us teach your material so that the dancers can advance to the advanced level clubs. Leave us alone. You teach your advanced, have fun. But the low level callers, the hobby clubs, the people that you need to get in off the street to form your clubs, don't kill them. Let them have fun. Please read my dissertation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir? Bob Riggs from the Denver area. I was trying to figure out which mic to stand behind a few minutes ago because I have some concerns. As you know, Denver is one of those mainstream meccas. I call for a mainstream club. I have some concerns, especially the comment that was made after the break by Kip, which says that here's the standard applications and this is the definition. Question is that what we're going to have to live with if we approve this proposal? That's the first question. The second question is, what structure of this Target 2000 committee has been thought of so that we can work out the issues that are associated with making this come to pass? Because I haven't heard anybody address, we're going to appoint a committee. That's all I've heard. What thoughts have been done in that area?
Do me a favor and repeat the second part of your question again. I want to make sure I understand it.
Well, I'm looking for what thoughts. You said, well, we're going to form this committee that's going to be working on this, if it's approved. Well, a committee is great, but without some thoughts on how we're going to put it together, those of us who are trying to help make this decision, that committee is absolutely critical to the success or failure of what we're talking about.
First of all, to answer your question about the standard applications, at face value, the proposal that we're looking at for adoption this particular 3-day period contains the expression standard applications, capital S, capital A. It refers directly to the booklet, the standard applications booklet, which has been endorsed and passed by the membership. Does that mean that the final product, when it comes out, will actually reference this as standard applications? My answer to that is I don't know. It means that this is our starting point, and that once we get to committee, it could change. It could change somehow. In all probability, it will change, my opinion. Again, what you need to understand and appreciate is that you're not passing this whole Target 2000 proposal on Wednesday. You're simply giving us the green light to set up the committees that you're concerned about. Now, the committee structure has already been analyzed. In a report that was submitted to the Executive Committee, a proposed committee structure has been proposed to the Executive Committee. The Executive Committee has chosen to keep that information to themselves so that they can have flexibility in designing a proper committee structure so that the maximum number of members in this organization can participate in all the committees that will be designing Target 2000. The selections committee for the calls, the naming committees, the implementation committees, and the committees that will be responsible for interfacing Target 2000 into our existing square dance environment. So that's all been thought of. I guess it was just a whole lot to really assimilate to try to show you a schematic, if you will, of what the committees would look like. But if you're concerned about will you have a voice, the answer is most certainly. We will be begging the members to participate.
I guess I'm more concerned about the fact that it is such a, once we say yes on Wednesday, if that's the answer, these next steps, and for those of us who are concerned about it, is yes, we want a voice, and we know we'll get one, but it is absolutely critical that the right steps are taken, and we haven't, because we didn't, even the list that you gave was more than the information that I've had before anyway. The short list of what little committees you think will be. Yeah,
the committee that was in charge of
putting this whole plan together has a very detailed proposal. But the idea behind this first was, let's look at the general concept. Let's look at the concept of an initial program taking so many weeks to teach. Let's look at a second program that it takes an additional number of weeks that would incorporate our existing dancers. Let's look at even a third program that for the first time CALLERLAB may take some leadership and say, well, these are applications are going to be assigned a difficulty level that's going to be assigned to these programs, and another difficulty level right to this program here. We're going to actually define that for the first time. We're looking at a general concept, and your vote positive for T2K means, yes, we give you the green light. Let's go take this one step further. Mike?
One other thing in addition is that regardless of what happens and occurs on Wednesday morning, there is another committee that's going to be dealing with the other factors that fit the whole square dance picture. Marketing, recruitment, that this proposal doesn't exist in a vacuum. I mean, yes, we can take a big, huge rock and polish it down to a small stone, but we also got to figure out how to get it to the customer and find those customers. So there's more than just this environment. There's also another program going on, too.
And then once that is worked on over this next year, then it comes right back to the membership, and the membership still has to approve it in the technical stage and when it's all broken down. If at that point the membership says, no, we don't like this how it is, then it stops right there. So your vote yes says, yes, let's take it one step further, let's see what else we can come up with. We need to gather some consensus and get more caller input.
All right. Young lady over here.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Regina Colton. I'm from Germany, and I have a lot of fears about this new programs. What I think is the current Basic Mainstream Plus program contains about 100 movements. So if we divide them in program 1 and 2, we are able to let me say, teach 70 movements of these 3 levels, and from the current levels. And what will be with the rest of the movements that cannot fit in the program 1 or 2, in the P1 or 2? I think, I'm afraid that we're gonna lost 30 movements about. I don't want to say 30 or 29 or 20, but I have the feeling that we might lost a lot of the movements we have now in the Basic Mainstream Plus program. And I don't know. I feel that would be a real loss for the square dance activity. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up, because that question has come up several times. What about the calls that won't make the cut? What about the ones that won't be wedged into P1 and P2? Let me ask you a question as a representative of Germany only, and as your own opinion. Suppose that we were to take the calls that did not make the cut, the calls that were eliminated, and suppose we would put them into a special quarterly selection type of category, so that you had them available to use on an experimental basis if you chose to do so, but they would not be an integral part. They would not be a main component of P1 and P2. Could you live with that type of a compromise, do you think?
Yeah, I have to think of that, but it makes my fears a little less.
Okay.
Thank you.
It wasn't really a trick question, because this has really come up many times with other callers also. Ladies and gentlemen, we can't reach a point where we can make these kinds of decisions unless you first approve this thing on Wednesday morning. There are hundreds and hundreds of micro decisions like this that need to be made, but there's no sense in even addressing these questions if we're not going to continue in concept with the whole program. Okay? So these are the types of questions that will be addressed if you, in fact, desire to set up committees to further investigate Target 2000.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Dick Hulbert from Orlando, Florida. Pardon me. Looking at it from the club viewpoint, as a down in the trenches guy just working, I must say that I don't really care about the rush to advance because I don't call it. And a lot of the club callers don't call it, and so they're not concerned with that. What we're concerned with is bringing dancers into our organizations and into our clubs. And on a greater thing altogether, I'm more concerned with square dancing itself. As I look around here in the United States, I don't know about overseas, but I know in the United States, the younger generation and what's going on today, everything is faster. And people don't want to commit to over a year of lessons. I've had many experiences of people coming into class and dancing and saying, oh, I really enjoy this. How long is it going to take? And, of course, you have to give them some kind of an answer. And 9 times out of 10, they will not commit because they want something done faster. They want to be instant gratification, and that's the way the thing is today. If you don't believe it, look around and see how many new leaders we have amongst us and how many young folks we have in our programs. Guys, we have to adapt to the world today or else we're in trouble. And the world today says, hey, I don't want to commit. We need an entry-level program that can bring new blood into our organizations and into our activity. If we don't have it, sooner or later, those of us that are in it and our age group, we're going to get too old to do it. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, Jim.
Okay, Mike Jim Logan from Iowa. My question is, why can't we divide this up into 3 systems? Because if we vote this thing down Wednesday morning, it's done, as far as you're concerned, okay? If we voted yes, then you go to committees again. But if we voted down, you don't know what we voted down. If we voted yes, you don't know how much have we won of it. If we had it divided into 3 parts like you've got it, at least you would know what parts we want to keep and what parts we want to drop out. It's just a suggestion that I have.
There's also the possibility of submitting an amendment that would divide the question, and that too is in order. It would be a matter then of whether it would win or not and so forth. So if there's any number of ways this can play out on Wednesday morning, remember we're in the middle of a meeting, and so at that meeting on Wednesday morning, and therefore all kinds of arrangements are available as far as solutions as long as they're on this subject area. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Frank Morrell, Wichita, Kansas. One thing I noticed was we had a P1, an entry level, which I feel is very important, because one thing that really concerns me is I look at all our new students and I talk to other callers, and we'll have a good class of students, and a year later I don't see hardly any of them. And, we've got, in Wichita, we have a big group of good, solid, experienced dancers, and they've been dancing for years, workshopped, but our new dancers haven't had those years of experience. They go out to a dance that really good people like, and they just get their lunch ate. And that's where I'm really glad that there is a P1 here, an entry level, because a really true statement is, you give me that which I want, and I shall give you that which you want. Walmart studies its customers so to satisfy the customer needs, so the customer gives them what they want, money. We want some things out of the new students. We want them to continue dancing. We want them to support our clubs, support our callers, join the clubs and everything. But they don't have those years of experience and everything, so they go out and they get a poor experience, and they say, my gosh, this isn't fun, and they quit. And I'm really glad to see some issues being addressed along that line, because that's the future of our square dancing.
Thank you, Frank. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Daryl Skippins of Great Britain again. Can I just reiterate the fact that we are not against emphasis entry level. We have run a club now for 23 years at Mainstream. It started off as basic Mainstream club. basic 50, sorry, and then 75. This last April, I carried out a very small survey within our club to try and answer a letter for our national magazine that was stating that we had got drop-off through the range of age we now were attracting, that we weren't attracting new people in at a younger age group, that we weren't retaining people. There were a whole list. I did a survey. My assumptions were proved incorrect. I had also assumed that we were having drop-off through age, that we were not having young people come into the club. Our particular club started off with the majority of people, I guess, in the late 20s, probably 29, and went up to probably 65. That was 23 years ago. Our present club has 26-year-olds up to 85-year-olds. So can we make sure we're making the new rules on the correct assumptions? In other words, do your surveys correctly, ask the right questions. Have you surveyed? When, how, and what answers did you get to what questions? Because we didn't see a survey.
There were not only surveys amongst our callers, because we've been talking about this issue since the 80s, and we had a major survey of our membership back in the early 90s. We had after this proposal was put forward, we did a dancer survey at both the Orlando National Convention and back in Denver to get a random sampling of how the dancers have felt. Each one of us, even on a regular basis, has gone out to our dancer constituents and discussed the same issue with those dancers. I think you're going to find when you talk particularly to a specific group of dancers that you're going to get specific answers, because these are the survivors of our present program. These aren't necessarily the people that couldn't take it and left, or couldn't keep up and left, or decided this is too complicated for me and left. So you have to understand also who are you polling. And I think that's the critical thing. That's going to determine what kind of answers you get.
Exactly, that was my main point. Try and make your survey wide-ranging and thorough. Go to an expert to get the questions set.
Thank you. Jerry?
Terry Story, Mission, Texas. I keep hearing people say the programs are fine, and maybe we should just all start beginner clubs, P1 club, basic clubs, and that'll fix our problem. But you have to understand that there's a logistics problem here. If we're not going to abuse the programs, now we can put that program in if we all still plan to abuse it. But look at it realistically. If you have a basic program, that requires a basic class and a basic club to accommodate it. Then you're going to have a mainstream class and a mainstream club and a plus class and a plus club and a DBD club. We don't have enough nights in the week to do this. The most nights of the week that we can expect out of the callers in this country, and I think 90% of them, that's my guess, it could be different. I honestly feel that the most we can expect out of these guys and gals is 2 nights a week. Any more than that, and we're fooling ourselves. They've got to be able to teach a class and put them in a club and let them dance. The opposition keeps saying we should do this, we should do that. If we did this, if we do that, everything would be just fine. Well, I guess it's easier said than done, because we've been trying to do this for over 20 years. Yes, we need to do a better job of teaching, and we need to stop abusing the system, but as long as there's 30-plus calls dangling up here for everybody to use, our problems are going to continue, I guarantee you.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me? Yeah. Brian Gill from Europe. I'm country based in Germany. I've also lived in Switzerland and the Netherlands. I've called for 26 years, and I've seen also a lot of change during that period. I also started during the time when there was basic 50 and 75. And certainly change should be there and should continue. However, I'm rather concerned about what I've heard of this movement of the T2000 from Europe before I got here. Some of those fears have been a little allayed today, but not all of them. And one of the points that I feel is on the table here is that I hear we're talking about 2 fundamentally different issues that are being mixed together. And it's not clear to me just what is expected to come out of that. The one side is recruitment, which is clearly an issue that varies from place to place depending on the environment. And the second one is the level inflation, program inflation, and that whether we talk about level or program is semantics from my viewpoint. Like any other activity, any other sport, square dancing is a pyramid. It always has been. If I play tennis, I can consider playing tennis as just knocking a ball about across the net, or I can want to take part in an ATP tournament, and I have to understand when I go into it which one I'm working for and where I want to go to. We as callers, I believe, have to be concerned with all levels. We have to have every sport, every area has somebody at the top, the peak, if you like, the entertainers, or the caller, and from the caller's viewpoint and the club caller, we have to be careful that we also have the base of the pyramid. And I think that's one we should certainly look at, and I have absolutely no problem that we have programs that address towards the base of the pyramid and making that as wide as possible and increasing to bring the people in. I do think we have to be careful, and that's what's happening at the moment, and I think certainly in many areas, including in Europe, that while we're working on the base of the pyramid, that we don't disturb the rest of it and bring it crashing down in areas that already have or continue to have a very solid mainstream level and perhaps some plus and so on above. I'd just like to, while I have the opportunity, without perhaps making too much time, to comment on a couple of things that are said here by colleagues. One, the comment was made about we see a lot of grey hairs around here. That's because there's no young people. I would say come to Europe. That is not the case. We have young people at all areas. We have people in the dancing, and we have lots and lots of young callers. And the young callers bring the young dancers, that's for sure. Why are the young callers not here today? Because it's too far and too expensive. That's why they're not here, and that's why they're not here able to give their opinion today. Another thing, when we're talking about recruitment, we have to judge and put our recruitment efforts according to the people we're looking for, and that's been mentioned a couple of times. I would like to emphasize that, and that means adjusting to what people are able to do, and that also applies to CALLERLAB, I should say. I would comment here, the reason we haven't been here before in 25 years is because this week in the year is not family friendly. Okay. So that is my comment at this point. I would suggest please think what you're doing here when you vote for tomorrow, and don't disturb the top of the pyramid. Think of the bottom of the pyramid.
Time. Okay. You, sir, next.
Bobby from the heart of Texas. I have three issues, actually. One, I think, gentlemen, that if we don't do anything, then we're going to continue like we are. We're going to go out of existence. So at least TK2 is doing something. It's moving in the right direction as far as I'm concerned. Now, I want two clarifications on the starting formations in the definitions of the calls, an example in the standard applications. Pass through can't be called from ocean wave, for example. I mean, just as an example. Or extend from any other formation in a quarter tag. Are we going to address those issues? And I think extend should be, allowable from other formations. Second, or third, actually, is a clarification on CALLERLAB's opinion, or the Board of Governors' opinion, whoever you want to address this to, that over and over, I'm a cyber caller, so I'm on the internet, and I see messages 30, 40, sometimes 70 a day on this issue. And the European callers especially seem to be under the opinion that first we have to teach standard application. Then we have to go back and teach extended application. I want a clarification that that's not the case. That if you choose, you can teach either SA or EA, whichever, from the beginning.
Okay. Who wants to try that one?
Which one? Three-part question. Okay.
I'm not sure I really understand the question. If you're talking about can you, under the new program, can you teach EA and SA under the proposed program? Is that what the question?
I'm an online caller continuously, and over and over and over I've had to tell callers there that CALLERLAB is not saying you can't teach SA only to begin with, or extended applications from day one. A lot of European callers are under the impression that we have to teach essay first, and then
they have left it optional. You are allowed to teach extended applications from the front if you desire, but the minimum would be standard applications.
Okay. Now, a second part of that question was on the starting formations. Are we going to be actually limited to the starting formations as they are addressed now? And why?
Yes. Unless that's done in committee to make those changes. And there's nothing in the current resolution that would indicate that they would make any changes to the definitions, or which is where it would have to go. That would have to go to another committee to change that.
Yes, sir. My name is Robert Ferguson. I'm from Elkhart, Indiana. My badge says Osceola, but Osceola is a suburb of Elkhart. I'm a new caller. I've been calling for about 6 years, and I've listened and watched and listened. And the first thing I'd like to point out is, why did we go to plus? I teach a plus class. I got 2 plus clubs in Elkhart and Bremen. Bremen's just south of Elkhart. And that's all I heard when I was in lessons is, you got to please, you got to go to plus, you got to go to plus. That's where it's all at. Right by mainstream. Mainstream just was there. I mean, it was just when you're done with the mainstream, stay in lessons, we're going to go to plus. I come here and I hear about all these areas that are having great success with mainstream. And I'm thrilled, except what if I wanted to send my dancers to that area, or they wanted to vacation in the area and they wanted to square dance? I think and I'm not going to ask so much of a question, it's just unity is what we have. I think what this organization has got to come back to is unity. Is if we're going to have a mainstream, it's got to be mainstream all over the country. If it's going to be plus, let's go to plus. But I taught my dancers, I got to teach my dancers plus so that they can go anywhere and dance. If I want to do a basic program at home, I can do that. I don't need another list personally to do a basic program at home. I can do that all by myself and slide them into the mainstream plus level, whatever I want. If I want to do DBD, I can do that all by myself. And as long as what I teach my dancers is done anywhere they want to go dance, that's what I think we need to do. In my opinion, that's where we need to be. Is if we're all going to do mainstream, let's all do mainstream. The new dancers don't know any difference. They only know what I teach them. They only know the part that I'm going to push at them, constantly. My other statement, if I might real quick, is the length of lessons is, I think, somebody come across that real quick a while ago. It's a long time. You take a plus level and you work on it and work on it and work on it week after week for 2 hours or 2.5 hours. It takes a long time. I want to get them out on the floor. I don't mind the list being a little bit shorter, and I understand the lady from Germany's concern about the other calls. Some of them I don't use. All right, I got you. Thank you.
Okay. Let me say this about standardization. You have about as much, in my opinion, you have about as much standardization right now as you're ever going to have, regardless of what you have on those lists for programs. You can put together any kind of a list that you want to, and that caller there is going to call most of them and teach most of them, but that guy over there isn't. He'll teach most of them, but there'll be a different most of them than that one. What you have right now is a list of movements that you call basic level, but that list is the same for him and for him. Doesn't make any difference. You have a list that's called mainstream, and it's the same for everybody. You have a list that's called plus, and it's the same for everybody. It's a recognition. So standardization exists now insofar as defining what is on those lists. As far as dancing from one area to the other, if your dancers dance plus, they automatically dance mainstream and basic. If they dance mainstream, they already dance basic. So they should be able to travel in that respect.
Standardization is probably one of the things that we have successfully solved. And it was really brought home to me in Pittsburgh when a German caller, after accepting the Small World Award, said that he had danced all over Europe, the United States, and the only thing that differed was how people said thank you. And that really is the crux of things. That's the standardization we've got to have, and we have gotten to.
I think that's generally true, but I'm not happy with this degree of standardization that we have today. The standardized dance programs were created for mobility. Dance for mobility. That is, to me, the paramount reason that we have standardized dance programs. Now I look around and I say, how mobile can our dancers be? Can we have people from Seattle come into California and dance? On a very limited basis only. They can't come into the Bay Area and dance. They cannot come into Los Angeles and dance. They can't go into any plus community and dance because they don't know the vocabulary. What about mobility from Europe? Dancers coming in from Europe. They are fantastic dancers. I've had the pleasure for calling for the dancers in both England and in Germany, and I appreciate it very much. They're wonderful dancers. But when they come to San Francisco and they call Kip Garvey on the phone and they say, where can we dance tonight? I say, well, you got to board a plane. There's no place for them to dance if they're strictly mainstream dancers. And so I question whether or not the purpose of our standardization is dance mobility. Have we actually achieved that goal? I'm not happy with the results so far.
I agree with Kip. I think that I'm not happy with the degree of standardization we have now, and I think this has gone on for a long, long time. In 1985, I took 45 dancers from the United States to Sweden, and these were all plus and advanced dancers, and they could not dance in the plus hall. They went in there, they just got blown right out of there, and they ended up dancing basic and mainstream the whole time they were there because they couldn't dance the plus program. I think we paid lip service to standardization. I'm not satisfied with it, and this is one of the things that I hope we can do with T2K as we put this together, is achieve a greater degree of standardization so that someone from the Midwest comes out to California on vacation and calls me and says, Mike, where can I go dance to you tonight? I can't tell them where to go dance. There is not a dance for them. And I feel like this is something we need to work on and we can improve.
Okay. I think it's you, sir.
Richard Reel from San Francisco Bay Area in California. I'd just like to know, what is it about P1, or P3 for that matter, that is going to make people excited enough that the community dance program and or the first 49 or 50 movements of basic haven't been able to do? What's different in the charter?
I'm going to obviously have to let someone respond after I do, because I'm going to give you what my tainted perspective of the answer to that question is. From a person who comes from a strong mainstream area, my concern is that the answer to that question is that T2000 is a way to sell a soft plus concept to us mainstream areas. That if I could have enough trust that it would be done right in the future, maybe I could support it. But having been betrayed, and that's too strong a word, as disappointed, thank you, Mike, disappointed as one who followed CALLERLAB programs for the last 25 years, to see areas where either through competition or callers and dancers not communicating with one another, whatever the reasons, areas maybe abdicated their responsibility and caved to pressure. I'm concerned that as much as I want compromise, because I stuck to principles, why should I have to lose again?
I know your area, and you haven't lost the first time, my friend. You have a great area, good dancers and good callers. P1 is not designed for the existing square dance community, folks. It's not. It's incompatible with our club structures right now. P1 is the new horizon. It's where we're going to take our callers who have always felt like, if I didn't teach my people plus, I'm not part of existing square dance environment. P1 is where these callers are going to say, come on, we're going to cut a new path through the trees here. We're going to develop a square dance community that truly dances the basics and enjoys them. Because with the lifestyles that we have today, which we've already discussed, our cultural situation, our work environment, we need a simplified dance program, a little bit more serious than our CDP program, and more in line, more directionalized towards our current Plus program. But it has to be a standalone dance program. It's going to take development from zero, from ground zero, and it is not going to be something that will interface directly in the immediate future with our existing square dance community. It stands alone, and you have to think of it that way. It's a new product.
Let me also say that if you believe that new product is a good thing and needed in our activity, you don't have to wait for the vote or for the selection of calls. We have a vehicle right now that allows us to go and prove that we can create a new type of program. It's called BASIC. And I'm sure that if the proposal passes and P1 is identified, it will be very little different in practice from today's BASIC.
You know, as a long-time supporter of the CDP program, I'm just addressing that issue, and one that has worked that CDP program too. The problem that we have is that it is vastly different from the modern Western square dance, and it has a tremendous variety in our dance forms, doing contras, doing mescalanzas, doing mixers, doing rounds, doing line dancing. There's a tremendous amount of variety in that program, but most of our callers would really have to go back and learn to do contras, and learn to do rounds, and learn to do mixers. And right now the CDP committee is trying to develop a program where we can actually teach callers to do this. So we don't have enough callers that do these disciplines to make that a viable big part of our activity yet. But I think with P1 and with the basic program, most of us can go out and begin those tomorrow.
Okay. Who's Nasser?
Nasser Shukir from Dallas, Texas. For the last couple of years, various committees have tackled the problem of how to bring about the desired changes with the least impact on existing dancers and bringing us the most potential for growth. Considering the spectrum of a horrible plan or a good plan or a bad plan or an excellent plan, T2000 is certainly not a horrible plan. It's certainly not a bad plan. Sorry. For example, can you imagine the free-for-all we'd be having today if content were being discussed this year? This stuff has gone through a lot of careful thought. I ask each panelist, what would you say is the strongest point of the proposal, or what is one change you would make to the proposal in an attempt to improve it?
I have to depart from supporting or denying. I believe, from my own personal observation over many, many years, that we have fooled ourselves into thinking we can teach a lot faster than we can. And if I had my druthers, I would not try to teach so rapidly. However we do it, whether you do it by reducing the number of calls in the program or adding time to the teach, it's my personal belief that we have made square dancing too complicated, and an important step in that is that we have tried to teach too much too fast.
The question was if there was anything about this proposal that I could change, it would be in the number of weeks. I am not sure that 10 to 12 weeks is the exact number. I would be a little bit more comfortable with 15, somewhere in that range. So I think we have some flexibility and we still have a way to go. And I'm hoping for the opportunity and for the vote on Wednesday that we can move forward and take the next step and go along.
I guess what I would like to do to improve it is I'm uncomfortable with doing extended applications with people out of that first group of the P1. I would like them to enjoy their dance experience for quite a long time before they're ever, if ever, put on that rat race of moving on. And I think that one of the best things about the proposal is that it talks about going back to establishing an entry level that's accessible for all of us, a dance environment that's based on entertainment and not on positioning.
Okay, Chuck.
Chuck Jaworski, Chicago, Illinois. What I have to say is kind of echoing what Kip Garvey said and Jim Mayo a few minutes ago. If we were to adopt the proposal, it would require us to establish a place for people to dance after 12 lessons, which doesn't exist today. If we were to adopt this proposal, that particular change would affect the pyramid in other areas, not so much the United States, but certainly in Europe. It would affect them. We have a current program that, if it was used, would accomplish the same thing, and that's the basic program. It would require us to establish basic clubs, but at the same time would not affect the places where mainstream and plus are already currently working. So I tend at this time to lean against voting for the proposal for that particular reason.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Ron Marcus from Tucson, Arizona. Two questions for whoever would like to tackle them. It seems to me like the basic idea to this whole thing, because of the amount of time we're talking about, 24, I forget what the numbers are, 10 to 12 weeks for the P1 and 10 to 12 weeks for P2. It seems to me like some of the moves on what we now call the basic, mainstream, and plus programs would have to go in order to get those programs squeezed into P1 and P2. Is there any feeling, any feeling at all on the part of anybody on the board as to how many, or the committee that came up with the proposal, as to how many moves might go? Just like I'd like it to be a lot of them, to tell you the truth, but if it were, how many are going to go? It seemed like some number would have to go.
I don't think anybody here could address that. That's going to be personal opinion, and what the calls would be personal opinion. When the committee gets organized, if it's organized, then they would address that, and it would behoove everybody to be on that committee. But, and you might correct me if I'm wrong, I really don't think you could do more than just express a personal opinion.
The only thing that I think you have to go back to the philosophical development of the original programs, that it was based upon the art of compromise. Frank Lane gave up snapperoo. Marshall Flipple gave up barge through. It was that kind of give and take that produced the original program, and I don't think that philosophy has really changed.
Okay. Now, we're going to do those people standing in line, and that's it. Then everybody's going to have an opportunity to say something at the end here from the panel. So, sir, you're next.
Okay. Jim Emery from Long Island, New York. My main problem with T2000 is it addresses a symptom. The lists we have are there. We as callers need to stick to them. The problem is getting dancers in the door. T2000 does not address that.
Yes, it does.
Yes, sir.
I'm Homer German from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And I'd just like to make a comment about something. And this is not really about the P1, 2, or 3 program. One of the things that kind of gets me, and I think maybe we talked about policing before, policing our callers. I have people come to my club and they say, I'm a beginning caller. Would you let me call a tip? And I say, can you call a complete tip? And they said, no, I can only do singing calls. I say, when did you graduate? They said, next month. We are allowing callers to enter our activity who do not belong there. They need experience in dancing before they become callers. I danced 19 years. I was taught by a young fellow named Ken Reed out in California. I'm sure some of you guys know him. In 1964, and I didn't start calling until 1983. But I think this is one of our problems too. We have these callers coming in with so little experience that they're driving away a lot of our dancers. Thank you.
Al Hoppy, California, Bay Area. I find that the lists that we have are basic, mainstream, and plus are adequate. I find that where the thing has happened is people see their friends advance, so they want to advance. They don't dance at the level. They start with basic, and then where's your friend? Oh, he started a year before me, so he's in basic now, or mainstream. Oh, I want to run to mainstream. So they don't dance basic. They go to mainstream. Then they go from mainstream, oh, where's he at now? Oh, he's in plus, so they go to plus. They do not dance the level at any given time. So everybody is rushing right off to the A1 and A2 without dancing the levels that they've been taught. And now this proposal here seems to me like it's accelerating what we're going to wind up with here is P3. Everybody's going to want to go to P3 and forget about dancing, mainstream, plus whatever. It's just an acceleration to A1.
Cal Campbell from Colorado. I'm in favor of P2, or favor of T2. A couple things I'd like to have you look at is, number one, that what we're really addressing is the level or the stage of education that people will arrive at the end of lessons. That is a baseline. And you need to understand that that's a baseline, that the education will continue on, whether they are going to be lifetime P1, P2, P3 dancers or whatever, that we're establishing a baseline off of lessons for these people to achieve. That's a very important concept from the standpoint of something that I think probably a number of us look at, and that's probably one of the things that hinged on the downfall of square dancing was the day that we quit having a walkthrough or a workshop tip at a dance. And we replace it now with a lot of real fast words, but basically we need to get back to the point of where dancers are willing to receive education and to learn things all their life. Now this can come in the form of throwaways. Someone had asked this, we used to call them throwaways. We'd bring something to a dance, teach it to them, but they understood at the end of the evening that that was fun for the evening and they didn't have to make that the permanent part of the vocabulary. Consider that as an idea. Thank you.
Okay. You're the last one, sir.
Oops. In my dissertation on the last page on the bottom, it says here, why is it obvious that no one seems to use the word square dancing as a complete program? Remember, dancers who are happy tell people. Dancers who are not also tell people. Give the committee a chance to form, and we will discuss the workings of what we're going to put in it. Gentlemen, thank you very much for a wonderful day.
Thank you. That concludes the question and answer period, and we have our 6 panelists up here. We hope that they've supplied some information to you and answered some of your questions. Again, I'd like to introduce Jim Mayo, Gregg Anderson, Mike Seastrom, Kip Garvey, Mike Jacobs, and Daryl Clendenin. And I'd like each of them to just take a second to issue a final parting thought.
We have in today's square dancing a great many problems. One of them may be the content of the programs we dance. If we think that changing that will solve all of the problems, we're barking up the wrong tree.
I learned something in my years in management that was a very startling revelation to me a long time ago when I heard the quote, "The purpose of an executive is not to be right, the purpose of an executive is to make decisions." The follow-on to that thought is that if you make a decision, discover that it was the wrong one, you regroup and go on from there. Maybe this is one of those watershed times where we make a decision one way or another. It is not a dead issue by any means, no matter how the vote turns out Wednesday. We go on from there and tackle it again or tweak it a little bit.
I think we need to keep our eyes open and look at the big picture. I agree with Jim that there are many more issues that we need to address, and some of them will be addressed in the coming years and even at this convention. But I think we need to move along, and there's an old saying that if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to keep getting what you got. And I think we need to make some changes and look to the future and work together a little more.
I've watched since the development of our dance programs, I've watched our dance community drift farther and farther apart, going off in opposite directions, heavy into a plus area in the so-called soft plus areas, doing just fine in the mainstream areas. But our dance programs that do not reflect the reality of what people are dancing are dance programs on paper only. This is our chance not to put a Band-Aid on the situation like we've been doing for the last 15 years, but to really take a look at whether or not we can redesign dance programs to reflect the reality of what our dancers are dancing. I think we should do it.
I think Jack Lasry said it from in this group time and time again, to trust the membership. And ultimately, whatever occurs on Wednesday morning, regardless of the decision, I think we need to trust that decision and go the direction it's chosen. We need to work together regardless of which way it's chosen.
Couldn't agree more with that, but I would like to add, there's 2 microphones out there. Both microphones have been busy ever since we sat down up here. That should show everybody that there is a difference of opinion. There is a difference of opinion. I think Jerry sees the amount of opposition to it. I think the committee needs to have a chance to answer that opposition. I don't think we can shut it down. Personally, I am planning on voting for the proposal, not because I like what they've got, but because I can feel that we definitely need to make some kind of changes. Those changes have to be well thought out. They have to be very acceptable to the community as it exists now. It's not going to happen unless that committee's given the chance to go ahead and do its work.
All right, once again, I want you to thank Jim Mayo, Gregg Anderson, Mike Seastrom, Kip Garvey, Mike Jacobs, Daryl Clendenin, and I would like to thank all of you. When I started this morning, and it seems like it's a long time ago, I asked you to be ladies and gentlemen. I got better than that, and I'm really proud of you. This is great, and it's just what we need. We need unity. We need discussion. We need everybody to sit down and talk and decide what we need to do. It's been a pleasure to be here as the moderator of the panel. It's been a pleasure to listen to all the questions and some of the comments. They've been excellent. There are questions that need to be addressed. I sincerely thank each and every one of you for a wonderful morning and afternoon. I hope that some of your questions have been answered, and I thank you all for your attention.